Hello, 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 Facebook fam. It is I, YouTube fam. I was going live on Facebook prior. Hello, 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 YouTube fam. It is I, Team Easy, that Beezy, broadcasting to you live straight from the Heezy. My time timer did just go off, letting me know it's 6:15 Pacific Standard Time on this Sunday, November 6th. My reading today is called On the Subject of Shapes and Sounds. And on that subject, my show and tell will be my hair. It is in a new shape and it's not giving off a sound, but let's just call this shape oceanic. I didn't intend for it to be so steep to go from shallow to deep so quickly. However, here we are. It may be seahorse-like, it may be jellyfish, but it may either way. I'm hoping it's oceanic. All right. Shapes make sounds. The shapes of instruments help make their sounds. The shapes our hands make to play the instruments make their sounds. I did not know when I went to listen to live music the other day that I would be thinking about shapes. I didn't think I would be relying on my visual sense at all. I thought I would be utilizing my ears, the tool I most need to sharpen. I rely on my eyes and hands mostly, visually, tactilely, and experientially. That is how I learn best. Even if the latter can be the hard way sometimes, I observe, feel, and participate as much as I can in this journey of life. Though lately it can be hard to get out of the house sometimes. Not because I'm caught up in the mirror or trying to chug the last of my drink like it was sometimes in my 20s and 30s before the club, though I still do pre-party with music before I go out sometimes, and have trouble leaving my house because my jam is on. My jam is on. These days, I can be anxious before I attend an event where I don't know who or what to expect. Without alcohol to take the edge off, all I have is weed or to take deep breaths or both. I think years of experiential learning have caused my nervous system to go from calm to high alert quickly. Between working for emergency services and the emergencies I've had in my own personal life, along with chronic stress and drinking in the past, I can go from chill to not pretty easily. The best thing for me to calm my nervous system is exercise or stretching. The second best is deep breathing, something that is a part of both of the previous, but easy, quick, and discreet on its own. As I got ready for a jazz party the other day, I played music and practiced deep breathing. I wanted to be jazzy, but not perpetrate like I was in a band. I don't have any musical gifts, just an appreciation for it. I decided to wear a turtleneck and a short coat with some blue blockers. I would be hip but low key, and the yellow tint that my blue blockers made everything. I would be hip but low key, and the yellow tint that the blue blockers made, with the yellow tint that the blue blockers made, everything would be yellow and remind me to look on the bright side, to get out of my house and my mood. I was going to see live music after all. That is a positive, upbeat thing, even if I don't know anyone but the couple who had invited me. At least I could hang out by a speaker to enjoy the music without having to talk to anyone, or take out my sketchbook and draw if I felt awkward. I pictured the type of layout the party could have. I knew it was in a backyard in B-Town. It was in a part of Berkeley which I'm not too familiar with. So it was a little nerve-wracking that I didn't have any specific visual reference and that I had to use GPS. But not much, only after I got on the freeway. Knowing that I was late added to my nervousness as I drove up. Seeing the block ahead where the party was located was filled with cars, I turned one block shy and then drove down a couple to park. Time to apply chapstick and practice more triangle breaths. As I walked back toward the street the party was on, I could hear music billowing through the air as though there were a chimney in the backyards of the neighborhood. As I rounded the corner, I saw a gentleman outside of a wooden gate. He smiled and gestured that I was in the right location. The smile and confirmation helped put me at ease. Beyond the gate was a long driveway shaded by the two-story house. It funneled at the end with people and rectangular folding tables filled with an array of food and libations. I set down the sparkling water I had brought and followed my ears past where my nose tried to stop to enjoy the smells of food. Past the tables, I found a sea of faces and foliage, a vibrant and verdant scene. People smiling, swaying, and enjoying the literal and figurative vibes. The back of the house served as a backdrop to the stage which faced the yard. Cords were connected to the speakers and instruments from the house, and there was a band several feet ahead, with their back to me and the residents. It was pretty packed, being the first annual party in a while since the pandemic hit. I found this out from the people who invited me, family friends who I've known since I was 3, at least. How do I know this? I met them at the preschool I went to. They are the parents of my playmates from back then. That is how my family got to know theirs. We have stayed in touch, not just because they are cool people, but also because they throw an annual celebration called May Day, a family tradition of mine since way back when. A hippie celebration that honors workers' rights and the start of spring. The type of tradition that still feels worthwhile, unlike many capitalist religious holidays I've been inundated with as a citizen of the US. It is an outdoor celebration that involves music, singing, dancing around a maypole, and a potluck. Many of the same elements found at the jazz party, although admittedly, the music at the jazz party was superb. It was the best concert I never paid for. Though it was labeled a jazz party on the flyer, it may as well have been labeled a stellar international music backyard festival. I could hear the drums more and more as I walked up the driveway. When I saw the backs of the people who were playing it, I was excited to join the audience and face the speakers. I was mentally strategizing how to without tripping on the cords that came from the house to all the equipment. The only available seat was right smack in the middle of the front row, on a makeshift bench occupied by others. I hadn't pictured all the seating when I visualized the space prior to my arrival. Just when I was mapping out the maze, I looked up and saw Sue and Louie motioning me. The friends who invited me were sitting adjacent to that bench. As soon as the song ended, I slithered over and sat down. It turned out that the woman to my right, in between Susan and Louie and I, was a friend of theirs. She introduced herself before the next song began. As soon as I looked up, I was immediately impressed by an instrument that looked kind of like a guitar made out of a gourd, except with a longer neck, the giraffe of the guitar family. It was beautifully studded with strings, and it turned out the lead singer made the instrument, which would have been appealing even if it didn't make such a beautiful sound. After that band was done, there was a brief intermission. Susan and Louie smiled and checked in, confirming what they had advertised, that this party had music that was out of this world, or very worldly, depending on how you listen to it. They made sure I had met their friend who was sitting next to me, and as they went to gesture behind me for more introductions, I swiveled around and saw Minda. Minda was one of my favorite teachers from the Child Development Center, the CDC, the preschool where I had met the children of the folks who had invited me. They had invited Minda too. She was the adult whose energy I remembered making us feel safe and seen all the way back before we were school-aged. The last time I remember seeing Minda was at a May Day celebration when I was in second or third grade. I had a picture of her and I standing with a prop from the traditional May Day play, a political satire of a play that is over the head of the children who act in it, over the heads of the children who act in it. I had never known when or expected when to encounter her again. What a pleasant surprise. We began talking, and it turns out that she is still a teacher, an art teacher. She teaches art at a school for blind and visually impaired students, something that I have never considered, though I have taught students with different abilities. I never thought about blind students or people who couldn't see making visual art. I have thought about what life would be like if I lost my ability to see. Of all the senses, that is the one I rely on most heavily. I practically listen with my eyes. In fact, sometimes my eyes distract me from listening. I can be overconsumed with visual stimuli. It's no wonder that athletics and art are my two passions. They require visual and hands on skills. Minda showed me some pictures of her students' work. They were preparing for an upcoming show. I was so impressed. I imagined making something that I had never seen or could not see very well. Students made paintings and sculptures from clay and found objects. It was a lot to trip on and appreciate. I told her that I had taught art to middle schoolers and that I incorporated art in camps I'd run, how I was subbing around elementary schools, hoping to find one that fit since I prefer working with younger kids. I told her that I was an art major and showed her some sketches in my sketchbook. One was of a building at the Oakland Rose Garden. She told me that she had a portrait she had done of me from the 80s at the Oakland Rose Garden, from a photo taken at the Oakland Rose Garden. We exchanged information so I could send her a copy of the pictures we took together, and she could send a copy of the portrait she did of me. We ended our conversation when the next group came on stage to perform. The lead singer was a woman originally from Caracas, Venezuela, she stated in her introduction. As she went on to introduce herself and the band further, she looked familiar. When she smiled, I felt like I recognized the shape of her smile. I couldn't figure out why. She appeared to be between my age and the age of the people who had invited me, somewhere between 40-ish and 70-ish. I went down my whole Bay Area lesbianic mental Rolodex and could not find any connections. When she sang, even her voice sounded familiar. Perhaps I just gravitated towards the Afro-Latino sounds of the band, even if I did not understand all the lyrics. She told us the meaning of some of them as she had us help sing along to one of the choruses. She also taught us the name of one of the instruments she played, the cuatro, a small stringed instrument comparable in size and look to an ukulele. After sitting to play one instrument and sing the first song, she stood up and picked up maracas for another one in each hand. They traveled in triangles and rhombi, making sounds at the point on the line where they made a change of direction. Physics, equal or greater force acted on the objects inside. Motion, movement, music. On her feet, she swayed and danced. Her limbs, just appendages moving the instrument from something in her core, inside. Music, magic, moments. Maracas. Live music can allow you to live in the moment. While she shook the maracas in shapes, her bandmate on the guitar's hand strummed and stroked the strings that reverberated in our souls, while another musician hit his palms and fingertips on a box-like drum. Another instrument I had never seen. Shapes and sounds. It too caught and sent sound to us in our chests, which felt the beat. I thought about the sound of steel drums that I loved and all the instruments there could possibly be. Maybe possibilities were limitless. Innovation has made music on so many surfaces and out of so many shapes, I am sure. I was happy to be there amongst creativity and good company. Visual and auditory, harmonious and healthy stimuli. It was worth pushing past the hesitation to get out the door earlier. Look what was on the other side. Hear what was on the other side. As that set came to a close, Minda mentioned that she had to head home. Instead of her catching a ride share, I insisted on driving her. She was healing her hip, and it was an important opportunity for me to thank her for letting us be kids and encouraging our best selves back in the day. To tell her what a positive effect she had on me in preschool. I took I told her in the car how I loved to work with kids and was thinking about checking out TK. I told her that I hoped I could be anything like her in the memories of kids. She said, I just like having fun and playing with kids, or something to that effect, which pretty much aligns with my philosophy. She told me about how she currently teaches students to navigate their art classroom and how she's been working with blind or visually impaired for students for several years now. She never left teaching. As far as her own art goes, she mostly does watercolor because she has always lived in small apartments. She does not have access to a studio that would allow her to do larger scale works. She said that she too had been reluctant to attend the party. As a full-time teacher who lives in with a Bay Area commute, she almost stayed in that weekend evening. Something compelled her to attend as well, in spite of being a little tired. I'm glad we both made it to the party. It was so worth it. She said it was like meeting an old new friend. We have plans to meet on an upcoming weekend this month. As far as the lead singer of the last trio we saw performed, it dawned on me where I knew her from when I was writing this blog. I remembered her name and Googled her. Turns out that she was the lead singer of a band I had seen perform at a band shell in Golden Gate Park sometime in the early 90s, whose cassette tape I had bought and jammed to for years. Moral of the story, I'd left the house anxious about the big, hectic world. It turned out to be a small world after all, with warmth, familiarity, and creativity. My senses were both soothed and stimulated from the party. My heart was warm and encouraged. Though I did not veg out on the food, I felt fed, nourished on so many levels. It was worth pushing past my anxiety to leave the house. Live music allowed me to live in the moment and find comfort in company, old and new. All that, Team Easy. Anything else? Just that I listened to a lot of instrumental music during the pandemic and the start of the pandemic. I had stopped drinking in February of 2020, and the pandemic hit in March, and I wanted to think without having my thoughts too influenced by lyrics. So I ended up listening to a lot of instrumental. Um, yeah, just another way that music can be healing and helpful. Thank you for tuning in. If you caught this, if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. This will also be available on my blog, youruoallthat.com, along with a picture, the actual portrait that Minda did of me back in the early 80s. All that, Team Easy, that Beezy.